Coming up now on 8:13 as we continue conversations with candidates for office. Joining us in studio this morning, candidate for Lafayette City-Parish President, Mr. Dee Stanley, joining Brandon and I here this morning. Sir, good morning.
Great to be back. Good morning
well,
to
we
you.
appreciate the chance to talk with you. And for those who have been listening this week, of course, the folks who come in, their competitors also come in to join us for their time on the radio as well. So we'll spend this time between now and 9 o'clock talking with Mr. Stanley about his thoughts, his philosophies, campaigning, his background, his experience. We'll do the same thing with Joel Robideau a little bit later on this week. So good morning, and thanks, obviously, for making the time on your schedule for us. We're hoping to give people another opportunity to really hear from you guys, although I have to say, in recent election time, you and Joel Robideau have gone to so many forums that I lost count.
We laughed about that last night. We did our last one of the campaign trail at Elise's last night for the Concerned Citizens for Good Government. I've been to that group a bunch of times. That was number 18.
Wow.
1-8. So yes. And this program, I don't know that we've been together with you guys, but we've certainly been together with Ken and Dr. John on live radio, and so there have been a few of those as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Dee, talk with us a little bit about Dee Stanley himself. Okay, so for those who may know this community, they know, former investigative reporter with Channel 10. They know you've had some definite years of service with local government. But, what else would you want voters to know in addition, or if you want to expand on any of those things? Tell us about Dee.
Well, I just think as it relates to our community in times of crisis and in times of prosperity, I've been here for our community. I go back almost 4 decades here. I fell in love with Lafayette, then fell in love with Blue Rolfes. We have 3 wonderful children, 2 grandchildren, and what's not about living in the greatest parish and place in the world? I chose to live here. I chose my community when I was just a very young adult, and fortunately for me, my community chose me, and it's been a love affair ever since. It's just been wonderful, and I've enjoyed being. That's one of the things, Bernie, that I've really enjoyed with the campaign. I've loved the door to door.
Really?
I love knocking on doors with Blue and with my daughter Catherine, and we've done that and touched literally thousands of people. And there's no substitute for that outreach, and it's like being back on the street as a young reporter. It's reconnecting with old friends. It's making a bunch of new friends. And I think that's the way a campaign is supposed to be run, and we've really enjoyed doing that.
Let me ask you, from your background, from the reporting background and investigative reporting, how do you think that translates into helping you if you do win this post or this job?
Well, I've worked directly in government with 5 councils. I've worked or covered the others over another 7 over 34 years. So I've been a real student of local government. I was around when the old police jury form of government was here on the parish side, and the charter was written for our home rule government, which ran parish council, and our first parish president was Walter Comeaux, and that was a very exciting time in 1984. It's hard to say out loud. Wow. That was 31 years ago.
Yeah.
I was employed by the city council and worked under 2 mayors. I had the pleasure of working under Douglas Strapp and Kenny Bowen, both very diverse and different men, to be sure.
Diverse, that's a nice way, yeah.
But both whom have left an indelible thumbprint on this community. I'm very close to Mayor Bowen's family. He was an extraordinary visionary as it related to our utility system. And much of the success we have today, including our utility, and the hiring of our current director, who's been there 20 years, were under Mayor Bowen's leadership. Was Kenny a controversial man or passionate and controversial politician? That's another hour program in and of itself. But he certainly was a visionary for our community. Douglas Strapp, the same. Most of the growth that we have seen in our community on the roads that we do have that work very well were done on the infrastructure that his government created. The last sales tax that our voters felt comfortable enough to approve was done in the depths of a recession in 1985. Remember, Stay Alive until 85?
Yes.
And it's been that program and our growth related to that program that have built the infrastructure that we have today. We have a lot more to build, but I think I take the knowledge of working directly with 5 councils, 3 mayors, hands-on for local government. We've balanced 12 consecutive budgets with a healthy fund balance. We are in a position now, as it relates to our operating fund, to be able to weather the storm that is going to come, hopefully without impacting public service. that is something that the state either can't do, won't do, or has refused to do. It is. I know Moon's probably listening in Alexandria and will certainly appreciate this, but they just can't get it right. They don't balance this budget. They haven't saved anything from anybody. Saying that anybody has been saved or any higher ed has been saved is like setting a building on fire and then calling the fire department. I think if you talk to the students at UL, where their tuition is increased 100% in 7 years, they certainly haven't been saved by anybody. So while you have an agency that's really kicked the can down the road for the past 8 years and not balanced our budgets, and don't take my word for it, talk to our treasurer, John Kennedy, who has basically termed this as a complete and utter disaster. You can't get away with that in local government. You wouldn't want to get away with that in local government because you guys watch us, and you should, and our community watches us, and they should.
Well, and it's closer to democracy, to a republic, I guess, because we can go knock on your door. Or we can call your telephone, and you're a local person that we can have contact with. I think that's why local forms of government, I think people do feel more comfortable in the sense that they can. We can ask you, what's the deal with this? Why do we have problems in this area? So I think it offers people an opportunity to get up close and personal, have their questions answered.
No, there's no doubt. I think arguably you trust your state government more than you trust the federal government. You trust your local government more than you trust the state because of what you just said. But it's still government, so there is certainly a mistrust that's there on behalf of some people simply because it's government. I want to continue to work hard to build on that trust by doing things and putting things to the voters and initiatives like the airport tax, which goes away in about 4 weeks. And we'll have, once the job gets done, this great new facility that we will have paid at least 1/3 cash for, maybe 2/3. But I think that's the future. I think voters are very weary. I think our community's weary, especially with the economy being the way it is. For taxes, I agree that I think we're taxed enough. I'm for more taxpayers, not more taxes. And that's what we've done in the Durel administration and have grown this community so. And I think that's why you hit these best of lists, and those are the things that the state of Louisiana lists that they can only dream about. And those things don't happen by accident. That phrase has caught on so much. Others have literally stolen that phrase from my campaign and are using it as if it were their own. That's awesome. I mean, that's great. Let's put the word out about making our best of even better. But we're voted best of in all of these many categories because people cast votes on who they want to lead their government. And I think we've been very successful with our council. We've been very successful with this administration, and that's what I hope to be able to continue.
So I'm curious, as we speak with Dee Stanley, candidate for Lafayette City-Parish president, you've mentioned the past administrations that you've got to work under and be a part of, and you mentioned your campaign slogan, making the best, our best of even better. I'm just curious, have you looked at your time under these previous administrations as building blocks on and learning tools to be able to pull into what a Dee Stanley administration would look like?
It comes, the foundation, I think, comes naturally. It is what it is. And as you build a foundation and your foundation begins to weather a little bit, there are some cracks and there are some repairs and wonderful things that need to happen. Accessibility, I think, is the key. One of the things that I'm proud of on this radio station, I will tell you that my cell phone is 739-7871. I don't know of another elected official or appointed official that does that on a regular basis. Now, sometimes my voicemail box is full because of that. I'm a victim of that success, and I apologize for that when it is. But as you guys know, I return my phone calls and I do those things. So back to the foundation question, absolutely. Learning about government as a student of government, a young person in their 20s, observing and watching how this government operates. Then actually being hired by the city council and working under two mayors, and then seeing the transitional piece to consolidated government and understanding the challenges that potentially lie ahead. It's easy to talk about relationships, but it's another thing to actually have them and to build them. And I'm proud of that. I think that's one of the things I've done over a number of years. To say that we don't get along with our council is absolute political rhetoric. It's just ridiculous.
Let's talk about some of that political, rhetoric, if you will. And Dee Stanley is joining us again. We're talking about the Lafayette City-Parish president's race. the first thing that we heard on the street, obviously, when you announced for your candidacy for this office, Dee Stanley is another Joey Durel. Dee Stanley is going to be Joey Durel 2.0. How frustrated did that make you? And what assurances are you giving folks that this is about Dee Stanley and Dee Stanley's race for president?
Not at all. How's iPhone 6 working for you? 6S. You want to go back to iPhone 4? How's the Galaxy? What's the new one? Tab or
whatever that one is.
Yeah, no. I mean, you get the point. I
Yeah.
mean, so you take the best of, to use the slogan of Joey, and I don't think there's an argument that we are immeasurably better in a lot of areas. But Joey is his own man. He's his own person. I am not running from Joey Durel the way other politicians are running from our governor, who don't pretend to know him anymore. Who is he? I've forgotten who he is. I've forgotten the programs. I've forgotten the buckets of water that I've carried over the past several years. Our budget, again, is in complete and utter disarray. The budget coming is balanced on $62 a barrel oil.
It's not there.
My goodness, it hadn't been close in the months that we've talked about that. And our budget is balanced. So I think that the things that you take from Joey, I don't run from that. I embrace that. But anyone who knows me knows that I am not a yes man to Joey. Joey and I have had some very diverse discussions, and we've differed on some things. But you know what? I also know who my boss is. I also know who the mayor of this community is.
And you understand the protocol.
Well, sure, and he's done an incredibly fine job. But I think the reason we made such a great team is because of that dynamic. I've worked as an employee and a clerk of the Lafayette City Council. To say that I don't understand how councils work and I can't get along with council members, it's just absolutely ludicrous. What I want to do is line all 9 council members up in front of a microphone when someone says that and says, ask them. Ask them who I don't get along with. Do we get along or support each other on every issue? Of course not. If we did, you probably should start worrying about your government at that point.
Good
but
point.
Just the 9 members and the diversity of need that exists in their district, whether it's drainage for one, or crime and law enforcement for another, or zoning and connectivity for another. Those are built-in different interests, and in some cases they're conflicts, and they create those discussions. But I'm proud to say if you looked at how our council has voted, 99.9% of the time they have been with the initiatives of this administration, maybe even longer. The ones who have been more traditionally against what we've tried to do, that's been well publicized. Those guys are, you know why that is, and they've made the comments publicly about why that is. But it doesn't mean that we don't keep pitching what we think is great for our community, and it does not mean that we don't get them. Those who have been against us on most of the, I guess, the controversial or the public issues, the ones you find out, that doesn't mean they vote against us all the time. And so we're successful in picking up the pieces and moving forward. To intimate that we don't, or that we don't get along with councils, again, it's political rhetoric.
It is coming up now on 8:27. We do have to take a break because we have news coming up, local news on the way. When we return, we'll have 2 more segments with Mr. Dee Stanley, one of the 2 candidates for Lafayette City-Parish president. We will talk about roads. We will talk about drainage. We will talk about crime, those issues, and the money tree, because no one seems to be able to find it in Louisiana. And I don't think it exists. So how do we go around that? Is it about a temporary tax? Is it a situation about trying to reorganize government? And what do we do about the unincorporated areas of Lafayette Parish? They don't have a tax base. There's hardly any there because all the good areas, well, all those little municipalities, including us, we snap up that good stuff right away, and it leaves the unincorporated areas without a funding source. All of those topics on the way. But first, this quick break, and then local news coming up. Coming up now on 8:39, 60 degrees here at the KPEL studios. We continue our conversation with Dee Stanley, one of the candidates for Lafayette City Parish president. All right, roads, drainage, crime fighting, et cetera. Let's start with roads and bridges and drainage. Like in the unincorporated areas, for example, there's no tax base. I mean, every time there's been a great business, whatever, somebody in one of the municipalities will just, they just chomp it right up. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So we don't have a real tax base in the unincorporated areas, but we know that a lot of people use those roads to come into Lafayette to shop. some of the surrounding areas. We got some issues with some major traffic tie-ups within the city on some of the major arteries. How do we do it? Because we know we are tax fatigued. You mentioned that early on this morning. Is there a way? What are your approaches? And what would you say to folks as they're making their decision to vote on how you intend to proceed?
Yes, it's so simple. In 2006, and this is probably the one regret of our administration, we put up a sales tax in 2006 that would have done $600 million in roads and drainage improvements parish-wide over the last 10 years, over the next 10 years, which would have been the last 10. Between 06 and 2016.
Yeah.
But you can't cry over that. So out of that disappointment comes an opportunity. Had that passed, that tax would still be in place, like the sales tax in 1985 and the one from 1961.
Wow.
Those are the two sales taxes taking care of the city. In the parish, the unincorporated area has but one. And you're right, because the base has gotten so small, because of the growth of the other municipalities, you're never going to tax your way to prosperity. Mm-hmm. A 1 cent sales tax in the unincorporated area generates about $6 million. Which taxpayers in which municipalities, Lafayette, Youngsville, Doosan, Broussard, Carencro, Scott, want to tax themselves to pay for infrastructure in the unincorporated area because they, as you've said, Bernie, use those roads to drive in? Well, no, it makes sense. If I'm going to tax myself in a community, I'm going to build that awesome sports complex that Youngsville has, that Broussard has. I don't want to tax myself to spend money on, quote, someone else's roads. The airport commission model that we developed, I think, serves itself up very nicely to do those things. Since the tax base is so small, you can do it through individual taxing districts, or you can do it parish-wide like we did for the airport, or you can do it citywide, or you can do it just in the unincorporated area. And that's why I say it's simple. Once you develop the mechanism, then it's just a question of showing the voters and the people who live in those communities what you're going to build with a tax that goes away. And if you develop, let's say, 1 cent, one project, which means multiple projects within that construction project, parish-wide for 1 year, you could do $60 million in road improvements in the parish-wide with a tax that goes away. You don't incur debt while you're doing it, and you're paying cash for the project. You're putting people to work as well. It's $60 million in infrastructure. So engineers and the people who work for the asphalt companies and the concrete companies and those who make drainage pipe, it's a little economic engine or development project that, just as the one Douglas Strapp did in 1985 for $100 million, helped pull us out of that recession. So I think the only way to do it really now is for taxes that go away. And then you build what you promise you're going to build. You better, or if not, you are gone, or you're never going to get another tax, quote unquote, done for that purpose.
Right.
The criticism of that is that, oh, here they go. The airport commission tax is going to drop off, and here they are. They're going to come up with another one and go.
Right.
The money has to come from somewhere, and wouldn't you hope that it would be done that way on taxes that go away? Property taxes, I have a real distaste for. And it's not because everyone doesn't pay them. That of course, is an issue. Arguably, when you rent an apartment or you rent a home, you're paying a property tax because it's part of your rent. Well, that's not right. Because if that's the case, you and I pay the property tax when we buy a lawnmower from Home Depot. We pay their property tax. So, and the proof of that is if on that building that you're renting, if the owner doesn't pay the cash for the property taxes, it's his property that they seize. So that's kind of an extension that causes me an issue. But the real issue I have is that people, not only that, but people who don't pay them are going to vote to make me pay them or make someone else pay them. So they're not paying them themselves, and they also get to vote to make me pay them and us pay them. Those who own property is what I mean. So I think historically Lafayette City and Lafayette Parish have had a basic distaste for property taxes. That's why our property taxes for the city and the parish are among the lowest, probably the lowest of any major city in Louisiana. And I'll give you an example. And again, I'm not advocating a property tax. I've just said otherwise. But if you look at the city of Lafayette, the total property taxes collected by the city, 100%, is about $23 million. It's a lot of money. But the budget of your police department is $35 million. So 100% of the city's property taxes will only cover about 2/3 of the budget of one department. But yet no one thinks we should be taxed anymore from a property tax standpoint. I certainly don't. I'm just telling you I don't think that's a way to go because those last. So for capital at least, where it's not a recurring expense, you build the project brick and mortar, it makes sense to me to do it with taxes that go away. The model is really similar to a toll model, because that's what tolls are supposed to do. You use the toll to build the bridge, and then once the bridge is built, the tolls go away. Or at least they compress, and you save a little bit of money to maintain the bridge from the toll if you can't fund it from other means. So it's that same kind of concept, and it makes sense. The one difference, of course, is that a toll you have a choice to pay.
That's right.
If you don't want to pay it, you can go around. A tax you don't. Everybody pays it. And if we're the hub city, which we are in the parish, and we're pulling in a lot of resource and people who use our roads and travel our roads to enjoy the entertainment hub that we are and come to our university, why shouldn't they share in the work that we do on our roads? Well, if you do it through a property tax and they don't own property, that can't
There's no
happen.
impact there.
Same thing with a toll. So it is simple. I think it's a pretty simple process when you explain it that way. The difficult part is for the public to believe that that's actually what's going to get done. And I have to tell you, the only way that happens is that we have to prove it. We have to be trustworthy. We have to put those programs out, and then we have to build it. And when it's built and then the tax goes away and it's debt-free, then I think the people of our community say, hey, you know what, we're on to something here, because Lafayette really has given not only government, but we give each other. And when I say Lafayette, I mean Lafayette Parish.
Sure.
We give each other things that are important to the growth of our community, and I think this is no exception.
Dee Stanley has been joining us this morning. We do have one more quick break. When we return, it'll be a simple discussion about, I say simple, we'll talk police and fire protection here in our local area. We'll also give a moment, as we always do, to all candidates for their wrap-up. So we'll do that on the way in 4 minutes. Coming up now on 8:52, this will be our final segment with Dee Stanley, one of the candidates for Lafayette City-Parish President. All right, so let's talk a little bit about police, fire, safety, the interpretation of Lafayette. You know, perception ends up being reality, but where do you think we really are in terms of our community? We have all these wonderful accolades about our community. So are we still that growing, thriving community? Do we have real big concerns with public safety? What are your thoughts?
Well, let me flip it on you. You report about this community every day. What do you hear from your listeners?
That people think Lafayette is just Lafayette, same old Lafayette.
We're awesome, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that there have been some high-profile tragedies. One of them, of course, at the Grand Theater. That type of violence touched our community at the hands of a psychopath who is not from here. The police response time to that crime was 10 seconds. 10 seconds. And in a little more than a minute, the whole scene was under control, and we knew that the scene was safe at that point. I don't know how you do better than 10 seconds, but still that crime is a tragedy that gets national news. Also, the tragedies of the 3 crimes that took place in the days after that on our streets, where mothers lost sons and grandmothers lost grandsons. Of course, that is a tragedy. But to say that law enforcement and to indict law enforcement for not being the best of is outrageous to me. I think it is an insult to our police department, to our marshal, to our sheriff's department, to say that we need to make our best law enforcement or public safety part of our best of by honestly addressing the needs. I mean, listen, we have given the best of equipment, neighborhood crime cameras. We have built a police precinct in the high crime neighborhoods. We have the high crime vehicles, the Armadillo and others that we place in those neighborhoods where there are issues. And so I'm not downplaying the fact that there are concerns in areas where crime is being committed, and that those people where those crimes have happened, it's difficult, and they are fearful, and we need to do something about that. And but for political purposes, to say that public safety is not on our best of list, we are a nationally accredited police organization, one of the very few. It is incredibly difficult to do this. I'm proud to say this happened on my watch and on Jim Kraft's watch and Joey Durel's watch, because it was important to set that, to make that step forward. This government and its people have been trying to do that for this organization for 20-plus years, and we have made that happen. There's been some criticism lately of CompStat. I think the people who are criticizing it don't even know what CompStat stands for. And it's simply marrying the computer statistics and the data that exists to the resource. And so you're putting the police resource at the places where you need it the most. Is there room for improvement? Of course there is. 35% of our budget, our operating budget, is the police department. If you put fire on top of that to equal public safety, it's well over 50%.
I was going to say it's around 55%.
So we're making the commitment to public safety, our Class 2 fire rating. But in discussions with our chief, we are working toward more, I guess, targeted, community-oriented policing, because we can certainly do a better job. But we can do that with anything. We're government. But I think those guys, I've said it, are rock stars. I think they do a tremendous job out there.
It's a thankless job.
They put their lives on the line every day, and I just, for anybody to say that they're not doing a good job and they're not the best of, I just don't get it.
I think, maybe that was not well thought out, let's say, as far as a comment goes. It is our final minute here, sir, and we'd like to always give that to whichever candidate we are talking to at that time for your final thoughts, and, talk to the voters. Mr. Stanley, your thoughts, please.
Well, let's make our best of even better. We've talked about it a lot this morning, and that's certainly a thought. Another one is for just to look at the money that is pouring into this community and how these campaigns are being funded. I happened to catch one of the sheriff's candidates, Rick Chagua, as I was on the drive in this morning, and the traffic wasn't too bad. Then listening to Rick talk about the negative campaign issue. And what I would suggest to people, first of all, I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. It's not who I am. It's not what I stand for. It's not what this administration stands for.
It's not Lafayette.
It's not Lafayette. It's not Lafayette Parish, and I just don't think people are going to tolerate it. It's not a race for president of the United States. So I think if you look at what we're doing and we look at our record, that's what we're going to be talking about. But I'd ask that you check, and it's already happened. It's gotten very, very ugly. PACs, political action committees from outside of Lafayette Parish, in Baton Rouge and other place, lawyers from Baton Rouge and other place are making egregious and ugly attacks on me, my family. I showed you one.
Yeah, I did. I saw that.
Before we got on the air. I showed you just a vulgar attack on my wife. And if you look at the spots and the ads and the things that you're going to see, what you will see at the end of every one of mine is paid for by Dee Stanley campaign, which means paid for by local people, local businesses, local citizens, from $20 donations on, people who care about our candidacy, the job that we've done, and where we're heading. What we're starting to see with others is paid for by the Louisiana Victory Fund. They had 20-something likes on their Facebook page. They filed an ethics complaint against me Friday, accusing me and Mayor Durel and this administration of committing a crime. Oh, my gosh.
Which
that's another hour. But look at who's paying for the commercials, and whether it says the name of the candidate or whether it says somebody who is hiding under the cloak of anonymity. Cowards. Cowards is who they are. If you tell us who you are, tell us the money you're putting forward for a candidate, and tell them why you're doing it. I'm number 72 on Saturday. I'm very proud of our record. I'm very proud to work for the man and the council that I've worked for in the last 12 years. And for those of you in earshot, I hope you'll be there for me on Saturday. And it's been great to spend some time with you this morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And, of course, we will be talking a little bit later on this week with Joel Robideau as well, the other candidate in the race for Lafayette City Parish President. That's going to wrap it up for us for today. We shall, of course, return tomorrow. More candidate interviews on the way. The Moon Griffon Show coming up.